Now that we have a quorum, Mark is on his way in. If I talk very slowly, he will be joining us. Well, welcome back, everybody. This is the July 14th, 2025 meeting of the MCI Concord Advisory Board. Hey, Mark. I've just called the meeting to order and I will take an attendance and the people in the room first. Linda?
Here.
Peter?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Dan? Yeah, here. Up on the board, I see first Elizabeth.
Here.
And John?
Here.
Patrick?
Here.
Lee?
Here.
Scott?
Here.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So would anybody be enthused about being the clerk for this meeting?
I can do it.
Thank you, Peter. And we have some minutes, it looks like, for the June 30th to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great. I guess I should go around again. Linda?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Dan? Yes. Now it changed up there. Patrick?
Yes.
Elizabeth, and you're moving on me. This is hard.
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Lee, I think.
Yes.
All right, thank you all. Okay, the next order of business is, first item is update with DCAM coordination. I'm gonna probably try to do that with a little bit of help from Megan. The last meeting we had was probably at least a week ago, maybe two at this point. The first thing I remember us talking about was, which has been on Paul's mind, how do we use the summer? Is there things that DCAM can be doing and we can be doing collectively to sort of keep the momentum going? I had said to them in the meeting that we were going to be having sort of merged meeting between John's group, the community engagement, and the regular meeting, and we would maybe have a better idea after that meeting. I saw, John, which attached to the package, that you guys did a lot of work on that, and one of the things that caught my eye was this idea of doing a, because I know several people from the public have asked about this, if we could do a site tour. And it was supposed to be, I don't know if this actually happened, it was supposed to be that DCAM took over the property as of July 1st.
Don't have confirmation that that happened yet.
I don't either. I have not seen anything.
And the book says it's still Department of Corrections, but.
Okay, so we can find that out, because I would imagine that, or I'm hoping that would make things a little bit simpler to arrange, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Other things that we talked about were, I believe they now have made pretty good progress with the various consultants that they have had hired in terms of wrapping up their reports, and that information was supposed to make its way over to agency, and to the degree that the timing worked, that information would make it into the final report, perhaps in this massive addendum that we were just talking about before the meeting started. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Can you think of anything, Megan?
I think one update I have is I was looking into a site tour for the land use working group, and I did put in a formal request to Paul, and he said that I should still work with Jeff Wick on that from the Department of Correction. for this period that we're in right now, so I did submit that this morning. So I think that transition wise, it hasn't been completely turned over to DCAM, is my understanding.
Yeah.
And, so I think we're kind of in that gray area right now.
Okay, and I saw, probably in the last 3 days, I saw a number of people that, I can't confirm this, but they're struck me as corrections people, that were walking around the perimeter of it. So, so certainly presence there. Some of them were uniformed, so that led me to believe that they might be related.
But Dan, I think just on the community outreach front, I do think that whenever we're able to organize something for the, for the public to come in and see it, we're going to get a huge turnout. So I think that.
Yeah.
I agree with that, John.
It'll be big.
Yeah, Keith was gonna ask.
Well, I'm just asking, did you see letters that said MCI or did it say?
There was something on there. I was going by pretty quickly, but there's something looked like Corrections, Department of Corrections, yeah. Anyway, yep.
I have a question about DCAM. Can they help us at all in terms of funding? I know they can't help with they're not, my impression has been not on the zoning side, but in terms of some of the other aspects of the recommendations that came out from the agency report, could that be something that DCAM could address, and it would be something we could begin working with over the summer?
Can you be a little more specific?
Well, there are a lot of recommendations, obviously, on the historic part, and agency had a lot of sources of information there. I don't remember which of those were state related and which were federal, so but that certainly was an area where they pointed to areas where we could gain some funding. And I sort of had trying to think in terms of, is there funding for the wastewater treatment plant possibly from the state? Again, I don't know specifically, but that's kind of up early in our consideration. And would there be any grants or possible funding that the state would have or direct us to the federal government, again, in assisting us?
I think we can ask Paul.
I mean,
It has not come up as a conversation, and the wastewater treatment is a little touchy because of, right, because of the different objectives perhaps. So, but it doesn't mean we can't ask. So,
right, and if there is money available for that, I think it would benefit both parties to work on that together. See.
Yeah. Yep.
If I can think of other specific.
I think that'd be great because we have, if I'm not mistaken, this Friday we have a meeting, our next meeting with DCAM. So if you can get me something before then, I can write some question. Is there anything else? Anything that you, okay, all right, great. Anything that you remember?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Cool. DOT coordination.
Oh, could I ask the question on the topic before you move on?
Sure.
Keith Bergman, I guess I'll say member of the land use working group. I'm wondering if this is a program for how the $500,000 you have in place for this fiscal year for MCI planning is going to be spent. That you get half of that from county meetings appropriation, the other half from the state budget that the governor just signed.
I don't think we know the answer to that yet. I think that's part of what's gonna come out of my
Because I
impression.
would think that in, looking with all the issues that you have, in fact, you have a budget of $500,000, so the town does would allow something.
Yep.
So is that new news to anybody?
Yes,
Oh, okay. So the earmark request that we had put in with our, apparently made it through the budgeting process and did not get vetoed by the governor. So in theory, we have $250,000 from the state. As
Probably
we
take
know,
you half a year to get it.
yeah, as we know from our last experience, that may be funded for the back end, but we can add that to our potential resources for dealing with this now.
yeah, what I was reading on the state budget was a lot of the earmarks are gonna be held on to, and they may be reconsidered and removed if federal funding, cuts drastically impact the
Yeah.
state. So don't count our $250,000 before it hatches.
Yeah. Probably wise.
Dan, Erin is on Zoom with her hand raised.
Thank you. Erin?
I just had a question. I know we were also trying to see if there was any remaining monies that we were going to try to carry over. I don't know if we still have that or if that was included or not.
I think that's directed to Megan.
Yes, we did attempt to go through the process of carry over funds from the FY25 earmark, but it was not included as part of the budget, and that it needed to be legislative action to do that. So I hope to have a better report to you all about how the earmark funds were spent at a future meeting. We're just still collecting the final invoices from agency of Weston and Sampson, but unfortunately those FY25 funds won't be able to be carried forward into this fiscal year.
Okay. Thank you. It would be interesting to see an accountant. That would be helpful.
It's like Elizabeth has a comment too.
Elizabeth?
Come back to me.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can.
My thing says you can't, but okay, cool. I would push us to get into the real existential question here of what we're doing, because it's really easy to spend money. And I have yet to be convinced that we know what we're spending money on next, why we're spending money so quickly. So I would just push us to have that conversation, which I think really gets at a lot of this. This vision plan is great. It lays out a lot of nice things. In some ways, it's not the easy part, but it's much easier to put down on paper what we'd like to see than to actually get anything accomplished.
I agree with you, and
With us, if there is going to be a partner with us to build something.
Sorry, we lost a few words there.
yeah, we did.
From accomplished to the last sentence.
Okay, now I'm back. What did you hear? What was I saying? I was saying I'm pushing us to get to the real question of what we're doing here. Is that the existential?
We got that. We got that.
Okay.
And just I had started to respond. I think maybe that interrupted you, but
Oh, go ahead.
that is, from my perspective, that is the purpose. One of the things we're going to focus on today. And I agree with you.
I think
So,
before we get
okay.
into this, how much money we have to spend and everything, like, let's talk about what we actually should spend money on, and maybe we shouldn't rush to spend money.
Yep, and we can, our item 5 on the agenda is sort of next steps. So it's kind of morphing both
Great.
of those together. We can probably push those, we can switch those around. I think you raise a good point, Elizabeth.
Thanks.
And on this, just to finish up this section, the last bullet point, well, we didn't really talk a lot about DOT coordination, other than the fact that there was a meeting on the 25th of June, where we got together with the DOT folks and their group, ACOM, and just to summarize, I mean, what we talked about, agency basically shared the different scenarios that we were contemplating. It seemed like, generally speaking, a lot of it was news to DOT, but in a good way. I think they appreciated the early involvement and they were going to spend, they and agencies consultant, which,
Schmidt, Judith Mitch.
yeah, Mitch, we're going to be spending time together to do a little deeper dive into that. And we asked questions like, how do we, given the different, the probable or likely difference in speed of the development of that information, whereby the DOT is probably going to be operating a little bit slower than the MCI program. How do we ensure that, or how do we deal with that lack of alignment? And I think the long and short of it was that we would continue to have these quarterly updates and try to keep each other apprised as best we could. And there may be a moment where we have to make some decisions about how future access may affect the project. So that's kind of, I mean, there's, I have a couple of pages of notes, but that was the big items that we talked about. The last item under section 3 is wastewater treatment plant coordination. Alan just entered the room for folks that are on Zoom. We didn't talk about you, but do you have things that you want to give sort of an update of?
Sure, real briefly. Can you hear me at home?
Nod if you can.
John is nodding.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Thanks.
So, yeah, we were successful in using the state funds, you know, that we had committed to. So there wasn't much, if any, carryover there needed, which was good. We were able to achieve some things in a faster timeline than we probably would have otherwise, so that was positive. The result is that, you know, we were aware of the issue with the needs of the existing facility to the tune of $25 billion. We've identified an issue with the existing infrastructure for the farm that is significant. It looks like they're going to need to replace their collection system. It is in that kind of shape. So that's an expense that someone is going to have to incur, probably DOC. We evaluated some potential siting for groundwater recharge. The reason we did that work is to try and enhance or expand capacity above and beyond the 310,000 gallon permit. We found some favorable results, which is good. We now have to explore permitting options, and the real challenge is it's in both EPA and DEP's court as far as, you know, how and if they're willing to work with us. We have some pretty interesting thoughts and ideas, but they will be pushing the envelope. You know that with the regulatory group. There's going to be a need to work closely with the Junction Village side of things. You know, that partnership is going to be probably helpful for both parties. We know that, but even on the wastewater side, I think that's going to be important. And we've also looked at potential interconnections between the Assabet pump station on Main Street to the MCI site. And we are talking millions of dollars to realize that, but we've got some preliminary layouts that we want to start thinking about. So that's important. So that's all information that we move quickly on, which is good. Moving forward, it would be nice. I know there's some funding, you know, that may be able to continue that work. But right now, it's going to be more just how do we best position for the negotiation with DCAM, and what, if any, kind of inroads can we start taking for regulatory support of some of these high-level concepts we have for permitting.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. That interconnect thing, I would imagine the cost for that would be outside, both for the design engineering and the actual construction would be beyond the 25 million.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the other question I have that's been on my mind for a long time, I don't think I've run this by you, is it seems to me for the amount of capacity, and maybe this is different in the municipal world, but in the amount of capacity that we're talking about, that one could create a system from scratch for significantly less than the amount of money that we're talking about for trying to try to utilize the existing system. Are we in that mode because of the permitting? And that obviously doesn't contemplate the permitting and some of the other things. So, but is that why we're kind of focused on?
We're not there yet, but I think one of the challenges of from scratch is you literally have to have an existing system to serve the existing users.
Right now.
Yeah, so the farm, the police barracks, MassDOT, their facilities need wastewater.
Yeah.
And, to tens of thousands of gallons a day. So not sure, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But that would be part of the,
Okay, it is something that will be investigated, I guess.
That's right, that's
Okay.
right. And
Okay.
also, when we talk groundwater versus surface water, what are the systems? Because they're different. And that's part of what we're trying to figure out as far as what's the right end product there.
Okay,
Two questions.
so, okay, Mark?
Did the analysis lead to any kind of rough order of magnitude cost for what this collection system at
No, having,
these
this
correctional
is kind of
facility-
new information as we
Yeah.
were doing some of the TV work, to
Yeah,
look at their collection system, which really was almost secondary, but
Yeah.
that's what this money allowed us to kind of advance.
but that's over on that parcel, not.
Yeah, so it's really to serve the existing operations, and one of the benefits is gonna be if that has to be wholesale replaced, and it looks
Mhm.
like it may need to be,
Mhm.
then allows for maybe a realignment of it. Where
Yeah.
does it go? How does it go? How does it get set up so it could potentially accept waste stream from redevelopment, that kind of thing, so.
Yeah.
Can I just interject a follow-up question? So that when you say collection, are we talking about from the edge of the building out? Or
Yeah,
is
we're talking from the treatment plant up to the facilities that's being served.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And could you just remind us if there are any timeline deadlines around the negotiation over the wastewater treatment facility that we need to?
There are, but there's also an understanding that we can't,
Mhm.
we collectively, the state and town, have to move in a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think there's an acknowledgement that if we need to extend that,
Mhm.
we just need to be able to understand if there's an extension, what does that mean and why?
Do you know what the next date is that we need to keep in mind? For
Well,
either
we're
extension?
literally just, the accelerated work, engineering work we did was,
Mhm.
a full court press to get to
Yeah.
like June 30th. So we're now kind of
Yeah.
we're regrouping, and then we'll figure out what the right next conversation with
Okay.
ECAM is. So
Yeah.
that'll happen very shortly.
Thanks. Anyone else online? I can't. The bar is obstructing.
No, it looks like no, unless
Okay.
somebody's.
Okay. All
You
right,
can hit OK and that'll disappear.
I can't.
Actually, I did have a question. Alan, I
John.
realize that there are 100 variables that we can't control. We don't yet know the answers on, but roughly speaking, is there a point at which, let's say that we acquired this wastewater treatment plant tomorrow? Do you imagine this capacity that we would have use of it for either the MCI site or for West Concord, let's say, in a month, 6 months, 6 years, 10 years? Like how close is the
It would
opportunity
be
to access this?
multiple years, couple of years, but we don't need it for a couple of years, the town. We need to maintain it for them, but our need is probably a few years out anyway.
Okay, thanks.
That's an important point, actually. Okay, thank you, everyone, on that. So 4 and 5, in my mind, are kind of linked because it's that question that we started to touch on before the holiday, which was, are we there yet, or where are we? And what comes next? And so I guess to the point of 4, which is the discuss and review the agency landscape report. At this point, has everyone had a chance to get their comments to agency?
Well, I sent it to Shannon.
Or, okay.
Yeah.
I think I might have bifurcated. I think I sent it to you and to them. Cool.
Hey, Dan?
Okay. Yep, Scott?
I have a question going back to the wastewater treatment facility. I'm sorry to come in.
That's
so-
okay.
If we delayed the decision for Concord to invest in this or be a part of this till DCAM has a developer on board, can we wait that long? And then we can maybe see if it's feasible for that to be packaged in with the development, and we'll understand the needs and the demands on their side as well as our side a little bit later on. Is there a rush? Can we wait?
I'm gonna look to Alan. I have a thought, but I'm gonna look to
I'd
you.
be curious your thought. That's a concept.
Well, we have, what I was gonna say, but I'm not sure this is necessarily answering this question, is we have the obligation to maintain an operating system. And my understanding of the system right now is there's some immediate needs that have to be
Let's
addressed.
be clear, we have no obligation to maintain that. They do. It's their liability right now.
Okay.
So if it fails, the risk is there'll be a lighter hand when it's the state and DOC and DCAM as far as how regulators react to the problem and if the town owns it. So, but no, it's their liability until the town agrees to some other.
Then I won't correct my thinking. I was under the impression that you were doing, there was some level of support that we were doing the town. Okay,
They're not paying for any support. The
Okay.
state's paid for the assessment work, that's it.
Okay.
They own the operations.
okay, so Scott, then your question is, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I don't see why we're rushing. Why can't we wait until we have a sense of the development? Can we wait that long? And
Well, I think the real question is DCAM's original offer, and it was, we believed, accelerated. And so I would agree that the town doesn't have to make a decision until it's in our best interest, but we want to show faith that we're moving forward.
Yeah, it was the legislation that actually pushed that required them to offer us the wastewater treatment facility. So, it's up to us to accept or decline it, but remember, the primary interest that we have is capacity, and what we know is that it comes with the permit. And that permitted capacity is something that we have been unable to secure in any other way, given the efforts that have been made to date. So, we still have the same constraint on any and all development in town until we can come up with some kind of capacity solution. I think that it is an interesting question of whether an on-site is capable. And, the reason I was asking the question about the collection system is if suddenly it becomes economically preferable for the state to develop something on site at the Northeast Correctional Facility and they pull that customer off of it because it's cheaper to do that than retrofit or build a new collection system, then that kind of changes the whole dynamic of the discussion as well.
You think, I mean, it's considerably
Yeah, that's
lower.
more of a what if than the state's gonna do. They're not gonna get ahead of it they're gonna keep what they got until and spend whatever they have on it. I think we may wanna talk long-term with them. Is there something advantageous? But
Right.
I don't see them looking to put a package treatment plant on one of their properties. Do you still have the state police that need
Yeah.
service? MassDOT building that needs service? Could it happen? It could, that's not something I'm really thinking we'll put a lot of energy in. I think the energy is when and how does the town best advance managing that operation?
Yeah.
And, the point of, if it was a private developer, then I think we need to understand, so now the town is gonna go negotiate with a private developer the wastewater capacity. And I can't imagine that's gonna go well for the town.
Yeah, I understand your point there, but on the other hand, it seems to me part of the disposition, which we may or may not start talking about today, but a disposition agreement, development agreement, there's a lot of things that can be baked into that. Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball. You're closer to this stuff. I can imagine people being pretty anxious about, any developer being kind of anxious about that, but.
Yeah, any uncertainty is not
Right.
helpful. We know that.
Okay, sorry, Elizabeth.
I think Scott's point is a good one, and I think to Mark's point that we need to solve this issue of capacity. From what I'm hearing, Alan says we're a couple years out from needing to do that, if I understood what Alan said. So I would push on that. What's the rush here?
I would, just to respond to that, I think that there may not be a rush in terms of an imminent demand for that excess capacity, but these things have such a long planning horizon that I think this is something that really does require a ton of focus to try to get to the right eventual outcome, even though that is not required for a couple of years.
Yeah, but
Correct, John.
by the time they put out an RFP and they go through the whole permitting, it's gonna be 2 or 3 years before there's any shovel in the ground. So you have time, and then you'll have a sense of what the vision is and the capacity needs are by the developer, and maybe we can bake in the costs into that development agreement. So it's like taken off our books. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, that would be our plan. That's kind of the approach we have. We're doing a lot of work now so that we can figure out what the right strategy is in a couple of years. I mean, but what I'm talking about, the permitting process alone will be probably a couple of years.
Aaron?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. This is a hypothetical. I'm not saying we would even ever consider this. It doesn't sound like it necessarily would be the right idea, but what if we say no? Like, what if we don't take the wastewater treatment plant? What does the state then have to do?
They'll have to maintain it. They'll limp along until the site's redeveloped, and hopefully someone with more resources will then do the upgrade, you know. The reality is, if we say no, we may at best hope to get a piece of the pie at some point by buying in, because we don't have alternatives for our existing wastewater capacity. I was at the business partnership last week reminding them, and they're all very aware of the concerns that one of the priorities and risks of economic growth and development and affordable housing and everything else in town is wastewater. So we've been sounding that alarm for 25 years, and I'm telling you, we've gotten nowhere other than spend lots of time and money doing everything we can on the soft side with, you know, attorneys and regulators. The hard side is we don't have an alternative. So that's kind of why I have a hard time imagining. If we say no, what we're saying is we're welcoming likely a consent order and moratorium on development in town in the not too distant future.
Right.
John?
Yeah, I think just kind of stepping back from this one challenge we have, putting this in some context. When we all became aware that MCI was going to be closed and we had the opportunity to take it over and redevelop it, we were all super excited. But it turns out that there are significant liabilities, financial liabilities that need to be managed, right? Wastewater treatment, we're talking $25 million plus. We've got this unknown remediation related to the underground tunnels and all kinds of nasty things that could be under there. I think the report says 35 million. We've got infrastructure costs. We've got this whole thing around Route 2 that is going to take time to resolve, which is all to say that this site is not such a plum site, right? It's going to take a lot of money to bring it back to kind of level to be able to begin building. It's not wildly dissimilar to 2229 Main Street in that way, in that that's a nice large parcel of land, but the cost to get it to a usable state has been significant. And fortunately, the feds have covered the cost of all that, right? I think we have a similar, smaller scale problem here, but it still is a significant problem that we're going to have to find tens of millions of dollars to get this site to the point where it really is useful. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we face, I think. And we got to figure out how to continue to kind of define and address each of those elements of this because Scott, I like your idea of rolling it into a package for the redeveloper, but again, these are still largely unquantified liabilities, and it's going to be, I mean, these are obstacles we got to figure out how to surmount.
Only on that too, it's pretty clear from the economic analysis of the report that to the extent that those costs are being pushed in the direction of the future developer, the answer there is always going to be whatever seems to be the hottest thing in the market at the moment, because you'll only make those investments in chasing the highest possible economic return, and that may or may not be what we as the town are interested in doing. I think, on the other hand, I think we're pretty successful when we put together a coherent story about what is the situation here. And the situation is that for 150 years, this piece of land in Concord has been under the care and stewardship of the state, and this is the way they've left it. And I think at this stage of the game, we shouldn't be too shy about naming that and saying, and what are you going to do about it? I don't think that, this is the one big difference between this and 2229 Main Street is that, we know and can pick up the phone and talk to the landowner and get them to hopefully be accountable for what is over there. And, picking up on Elizabeth's point about what we do next, it has occurred to me that trying to investigate this further and take care of some of those unknowns, just like we were talking about with the wastewater treatment facility, if we have a clear plan about what should be done to put it back into use, that eliminates uncertainty for a future developer. If we make efforts to try and understand what the remediation of the site actually needs to be, that reduces uncertainty for the developer. And then, to Linda's point, if there are grants or, from the EPA or elsewhere to try and do certain kinds of remediation, then we know what they need to be.
Patrick?
Thanks, Dan. I'll be brief, but I just wanted to emphasize the point that John just made and Mark articulated, which I think as we move forward and consider the scenarios that agency prepared, thinking about the current state of the property, the condition that it's in, and not assuming that it is necessarily the responsibility of the town nor the private developer who ultimately redevelops the property to necessarily to incur the full cost of remediating that site, given that the state has left it in the condition that it currently is in.
So in light of those considerations, how do we think we ought to be proceeding? Throw that out for conversation.
I would offer one thought, right, which may be a simple one. I think for both, wastewater and call it the MCI redevelopment, I think are related but somewhat distinct. I think as we consider both of those situations, we should approach it just with that context in mind. Dan, we had many conversations with agency. I think that point that was just made does not come through very clearly in those materials. So I think it's our responsibility as the advisory board to make sure that as we now move forward from visioning to a recommendation through the course of this year, that is, that point, or that point for both properties, if you will, is considered.
Peter, were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that to some extent, the fact that we don't have the clarity on the wastewater treatment plant and the 21E contamination issues and the Route 2 rotary, the longer we cogitate on it and look at it, the more chance that those issues will begin to be clarified. And we're trying to basically create a timing and phasing that will work with clarification of the Route 2 rotary layout and bringing the wastewater treatment facility online and the like. So, you know, I think we need to spend some time looking at phasing of development and working with DCAM as to how they will release the parcel for redevelopment so that it would take advantage of our growing knowledge of the site and work in harmony with the town's interests. I think we need to sort of try and think about, when do we want the phasing? You know, when do we want a flyover of ComAv over Route 2? And do we want all of the traffic going out onto ComAv before that's done? Or, you know, so we can think about those things and try and work with the state so that to minimize the impact on the community.
So, a couple of things. One of them relates to that. My recollection is that in the last conversation with agency, one of the tasks that we asked them to consider was to develop a phasing timeline. And so I haven't seen anything on it. And part of that absolutely relates to this question of disposition. And the other part of my thought is that, and I'm looking to you, Mark, now, one of the things that we need to do in fairly short order is to give the select board an update.
Mhm.
And to me, this is, these kind of questions that are being raised in this meeting right now are questions that I think we need to check in, several of them we need to check in with them to see that the direction that we want to go. I mean, Alan and Megan are always doing their things every day because they're keeping the town running. But this is planning that's going to have ultimately consequences for town operations. So it seems like this is I wish we had a little more clarity, but to Peter's point, I think that there are a lot of questions that are attempting to be better understood. We have what we have in this moment. Okay. Elizabeth?
So, Peter, I guess I kind of have a question. So in my mind, zoning's great. I mean, all this planning we're doing is great, but as I said earlier, this is, in a lot of ways, this is the easy stuff. The hard stuff is finding something we actually want to go there. So Peter, in the sense of Devon's, we're just kind of putting it out there and then hoping that a developer comes back to us and says, hey, we're going to comply with everything you want. And that's great, but what about actually going out and searching for partners that we might actually want? Civic, institutional, things like that.
There's nothing that's restraining us from doing so.
To me, that's the hard part. Like anyone who owns real estate knows, finding the tenant is the hard part. And I keep thinking back when my father was a young attorney, he worked on Harbor Towers and he was working with IMPay, and IMPay wanted to do something. My dad said, well, that doesn't comply with zoning. And IMPay said, let's figure out what we want first, and then we'll figure out the zoning. Now, I know that's not exactly true here. I also am not sure what right now the problem is leaving it as it is. Do I think that DCAM's gonna come in and put something industrial there? Probably not. To me, the much more creative, difficult, and maybe more worthy of Concord as a creative and intelligent community is to be more proactive about who we want. And that's my soapbox speech.
And it's a good one.
Um, before I respond, I'm gonna let John, you had a question, comment?
I guess I had a comment, I guess, but it actually follows nicely on Elizabeth's point. Um, as we've jumped right into all the liabilities and the challenges we have here, we haven't really actually made mention of the fact that I think the report is excellent. And I think agency did an outstanding job synthesizing a whole bunch of things into a comprehensible report that really lays out options really effectively. So one thing I do think is worth us doing is to actually um, let's come to consensus on what our preferred vision is, right? So we know that scenario 3 was the favorite of the voters, if you will. We also know there were, I suspect that there are elements from scenarios 1 and 2 that we liked, that we might want to see kind of fused into a final vision. And I just think it would be, I think it would be helpful for the community and for the recommendation we're going to give the select board to say, this is kind of a hybrid vision we think is the one. I don't think that needs to be grounded in a whole bunch of economic reality, et cetera. Right. I just think taking the 3 and coming up with a consensus on a preferred vision would be helpful to the process. Then we can kind of set that aside and move forward with the other pieces. I also think that this is very tactical compared to the stuff we're talking about, but I do think that continuing the outreach to the community is going to be really important. So we have just hit this huge milestone. The report has been delivered, right? I had put together some thoughts for the community outreach subcommittee. We haven't actually had a chance to have an in-person meeting yet to discuss those, but that's what you saw in the packet. And so those have not been fully vetted by the committee, but I do think adding a component to the website that kind of specifically addresses the vision plan or the vision report and beginning to do some social media outreach just to keep the conversation going, to ensure that we don't lose all this trend, all this momentum, and all the kind of the goodwill we've generated by being super transparent throughout the whole process. I don't want to lose that. So that is going to cost a little bit of money to hire someone to do that. I would think that could be an easy add-on to agencies' prior contract. My understanding is we can spend up to 25% without having to go through a rebid. I think this is a fraction of that, but we do need to have the people who built the website add some features to it and add some information to it, just to I think close the books, if you will, on the vision plan.
I agree with everything that you guys have just said. And I think in addition to that, or maybe related to it, it seems to me if we're going to give the select board an update, we ought to be prepared to say this is where we kind of landed. At least, this is how we're feeling at the moment with the information that we have. So I'm not quite sure how to get there. I mean, we could have a conversation about it. We could share our preferred thoughts. We could sort of do the debate. But I do think that's an important task. I don't know if we're prepared to do it today. How do people feel about that? Oh, Aaron?
I guess from the community outreach standpoint, maybe you give our little subcommittee a little bit of time to develop some recommendations based, I think, on what John has already outlined, and maybe come back to the overall advisory board to say, like, okay, these are the next steps we would need to do. These are the remaining outreach pieces that we would have. I think there are some prescribed ones that still have to happen. And I think that would allow us to develop an action plan for those remaining pieces.
Okay. And Scott?
Yeah, I had a question about timing. When do you need to get back to the select board? Is it something they probably want to hear imminently, or is it something you can wait a couple months on? The reason I'm asking is I'm just throwing this idea out. We have a lot of smart people around the table, and I'm sure we can come to consensus. But we could also tap ULI tap program or something like that, where you bring in experts and you really can question us of where we want to go and really sort of question the visions, make sure we're assuming the right things and make sure we are understanding all the different ramifications of each option. And I was just wondering if we need an outside help. If not, I think we're fully capable of doing it internally too. So I just wanted to throw that out. I wasn't sure of the timing.
I'll just quickly answer the first part before we hear from Emily. My perspective on that is that the select board is willing to give this board the time to absorb and take in the information that's been delivered to us and figure out what that is. I mean, we don't have infinite time, but if it's another meeting or two, that would be certainly okay. I would encourage us to add to our preferences as well, an answer to the question of what is it besides the big three things that we've already talked about in this meeting. Is there anything else that we don't know yet that we would like to know about this site that might be an investigation going towards actions that might be sponsored by this at this point?
Emily,
Yeah, thank you. It's more of a sort of a statement or a feeling that I've shared with the community outreach committee. I mean, I guess my challenge as we evaluate what is next, and like Scott, I love the idea of bringing in, ULI, et cetera, but is that like we're at this moment in time, which is particularly volatile if you think about like construction, et cetera, and we are going to be delayed for a multitude of reasons that we've all discussed, right? So it's like, and maybe this comes back to Aaron's point about the subcommittee kind of coming together to make some recommendations, but I just think our recommendation needs to be somewhat fluid to allow for how the economy is going to change over the passage of time, hopefully for the better, as we progress over the next 5 years. So I guess like I'm sort of reticent to put too much of a stamp on like, this is exactly what we want. And maybe it's phrased as like, this is what we believe the town needs and will support. So just my 2 cents.
yeah, good point. Which makes me think of Devin's question earlier also. Peter, correct me if I'm wrong on this. An important difference between the properties is that Devon's essentially was land banked by mass development. And if we could snap our fingers as a town and figure out how to be in a position of land banking, that would be awesome, because it kind of gives us all the things we're looking for. It gives us more time. It lets the market sort of work itself out, and it's just a great way to develop a parcel like this. But I'm not sure that that's going to be enough.
Yeah, just to clarify a little bit, the federal government held on to portions of Devon's until it was cleaned up and brought to redevelopment standards, at which point the state would take it over. And there were a couple instances where the state sold land before the federal government had it cleaned up, but they reached an agreement on how to deal with it. But the land banking idea makes sense. And that was sort of what I was thinking about in terms of the phasing the redevelopment in collaboration with the state. So some of that could be done through memorandums of understanding or land use, development agreements between the state and the town and the potential developer in terms of, you can start putting traffic on the Commonwealth Avenue once DOT has finished its flyover over Route 2 or something like that. Things that we can all sit down and discuss in terms of, what are the impacts going to be, and when do we want those to phase in?
Do you think we could drive that through the zoning process? In other words, agree to rezone portions?
Well, we could rezone it, but then have the separate agreements that say you can't do this until these thresholds have been met. And so that was done through the environmental impact report, the final environmental impact report for the whole site. So at Devon's, they did a umbrella environmental impact report, which looked at getting a permit for the entire site, which in this case was 4,000 acres. Here it would be the 80 acres. So we can do that. It would identify all of the things that would need to be done to upgrade the infrastructure and environmental improvements, including the wastewater treatment plant, and then say, you can do this when this occurs. You can do that when this occurs. The developer, when he comes on, will have to make traffic improvements to, the end of Commonwealth Avenue in Lawsbrook when this occurs, that type of thing. But you can lay it out and assign some timing so that there are thresholds built in.
Dan?
Sure, yep.
Hi, sorry, I'm in the car. Just to carry forward what Peter was saying, one thing, a big difference is that the infrastructure was largely in place before significant development began in Devon's, and it also expanded and was improved over time, which I think we're in at least financially, a pretty different situation here. And then just generally, I wonder, what happens if we propose, fill in the blank, four different uses, and because of the infrastructure problems or the remediation costs, et cetera, it's just simply not feasible. Where does that leave us? Are we just, the state just, I guess for a better word, land banks it, but are our efforts a failure at that point? And I don't know the answer, but for us to just assume we're going to put an overlay district on it approved by town meeting is very different than actually getting multiple or one developer to come in connection with the state, presumably kicking in some money and actually being able to carry out a development project.
So I have an observation. I hope this is going to be helpful. We're in this very interesting moment right now. I'll come back to what Elizabeth said. It seems to me, and this has to do with how we are as an advisory board. We have this different sensibilities, and to our credit, this comes back to that word I like, stratactor. We have people that both can think strategically and tactically, and I do believe that's the strength of who we are. That said, we're at this moment in the project where we don't have enough information. That's become very clear. And so what we could do is we could theoretically do what Elizabeth was describing earlier in this moment, and we could start to create a story, the story that we liked and we believe would be best for that property. And then that would allow us a pause point to then begin to infill around with all the tactical stuff that we need to do deeper dives in. Just a thought. I don't know it's the right thought, but I do, that's, as I listen to the various conversations and threads, that's what comes up in my head. Keith?
Just a suggestion. First, I think that's an excellent idea, Dan, that you are the town's MCI advisory group. This excellent report, which has just come out, which I think is worthy of people knowing about, like to read about it in the newspaper, or see it prominently posted at the town website or at the MCI website. I know it's at the land use working group website because the committee insisted on being able to read the report and see what's in it. The vision that comes, it's the vision part, which is what you spent your time on engaging with the community. What does Concord want to see at this property? And there's an intrinsic value of that information, even at this point in time, even if there are many, many other steps which don't involve the town in order to remedy, and which principally involve DCAM and the state, or maybe even, or maybe it's time for the state to hand it over to Mass Development, or maybe such a time would come. But somehow, where the town goes is to, in Dan's words, tell the town story of what you want to see there, and to work hard with the other partners, the state principally, to push them on how they're going to go forward with a property, which frankly is their problem to solve. We keep saying, the room keeps saying we, it's not we, it's them, it's the state that is the decision maker, and we in Concord are just helping to advise loudly on what should go there, and we'll need to hear loud voices at town meeting to approve whatever zoning goes with that.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, I sort of echoing what Keith said. We're at a point where we want to put together something we want for town of Concord and for us and all that ideally, but we're at the constraint of all the outliers and the risks of the wastewater treatment facility and the cleanup and everything else. We kind of need to be almost on the same page with DCAM, because if we put something forward that doesn't pencil out or doesn't work from a development standpoint, or we're not helping each other, it's almost like we need to be collaborating a little bit more with them and sharing cost information and time frame information and all that, envisioning. I don't know how you do that, but because we're going to put forward something, we're going to recommend something, but that might not work with them, and then it's going to we're going to communicate with the town, well, this is what we're thinking, and the select people, and then it's not going to work out. And I think they're ultimately in charge, as Keith said, but we got to be in collaboration with them in some capacity to understand all the different costs involved and all the different risks.
Alan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to follow up on that collaboration, it is a two-way street. And part of our challenge is we don't have a lot of information. You know, their phase one work is pretty lean, right? And that's all about liability. We understand, you know, there's risks. We have taken the state's money, fortunately, and tried to uncover a lot of the risk and liability on the wastewater. We have a much clearer picture of that than anything else on that campus. And so if we're going to partner and collaborate, we got to have that both ways. And that's where I think there's a real risk of the, uncertainties. What's really important is for this advisory board, we're going in with our eyes wide open. That's really important. All the discussion you're having is really important, because what you don't want is the classic, uncertainties that the town just accepts because, they got visions of things. No, we're doing real work, and it's a little bit messy, but it's necessary. So I'd say, credit to the advisory board, to the town. We have to go in with our eyes wide open. We got to have the state understand that's what we're doing, and that collaboration, I think we need to be working on that.
Sorry, go ahead, Pete.
I just want to, volunteer Lee Smith to write the land use agreement that says anything that we don't know about that we find on the site, the state's responsible for. He's good at that.
I can attest to that. Can I just
We should ask him if he can get that done.
yeah, one thought that strikes me, and it goes back to a suggestion that Elizabeth made earlier, which is, if we think of this almost like an online dating thing, how would we describe our ideal developer with the vision? What are the characteristics, whether it's the specific development program? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that I can imagine us coming up with that would go on our short list of things that this person, because if we're going to go out and start to pursue that partner, we need to understand what that partner needs to consist of, the qualities. Elizabeth, you want to whack me for that?
Yeah, no, I did not say the online dating thing, but I will say that thinking about what the role is for a consultant going forward, why can't this matchmaking be part of that? I mean, these guys work with civic and different institutions, and I don't know how much we've actually even said to the state straight out, hey, what about UMass? What are they looking at? I know everyone's going to say they don't have any money, blah, 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 but we don't know what discussions are being had. And I think that is more important, honestly, than saying, we want, I'm not sure it's saying a lot to say we agree with one of these scenarios. In some ways it is, but on the other hand, we're going to say what we like, and a developer is going to either make it work or not make it work. So I think it should be part of going forward that we hire someone to help us go out and seek partners.
John?
By the way, this is a great discussion. I think we're really making a lot of progress here. It's really good. A couple points. One, I do agree with what Scott said. Collaboration is key. We need to be kind of attached to the hip to DCAM, right? This really, as Keith says, it's their site, it's their problem. We're trying to help kind of maximize the chances of a really good outcome here, but it's not ours, right? So it's not our problem. But so that collaboration is really important. To Elizabeth's point, I think it's a little premature for us to be talking to developers. I would suggest that we kind of identify a list of all the areas where we have information gaps. There's a lot of them, right? And to the extent that we have resources available, maybe that's where we need to be spending money to bring in the experts to help us, do the next level of environmental work. And it's the state's site. The state should be paying for that. That would be would seem a valid use of some of the earmark funds. Understanding better what's going on with DOT. I mean, a bunch of areas where we just don't have enough information, and I think it's going to be really hard to make progress with the developer until we can answer those questions.
I think that's a great point, John, and I think that what I like about it is from a reporting to the select board, we can say, here's everything that everyone has said. Here's where we are at this moment, all right? And here's some things, we have a high quality report. We did a bunch of initial investigation. Alan's been doing the work on the waste. We understand a lot of things now, but we also, one of the things we understand is we got a whole lot more work to do. And so it would be nice, and I think this is what I think we're working towards, if at any moment, if they said, all right, game's over, time's up, put your pencils down, we have something that somebody could then follow on in action, that we at any point, that people know what the next steps are. And I feel like that would be a very responsible way for us to maybe at the next report to do that. So does that happen, John, at the subcommittee level? Because you kind of already started to do that at community, and that's my impression, community engagement. You guys have started to say, here's what could be next, right?
Well, I think part on the communication front, I think that, if I'm beginning to think about what the bullets are for our next update to the select board, one is community input was a priority. Everyone's anxious about what the heck is going to happen in MCI Concord. We've done that process now. We've gathered a lot of information, but there are still a lot of information gaps. So yes, we will continue to communicate with the community, but in terms of where we focus our time, this is probably like the land use subcommittee and also legislative affairs. Like, what information do we need to have to put together an achievable land reuse strategy, and how do we work with the state to get all that funded in the most efficient manner possible? It's going to take time and cost money.
Well, 4 bullets that just came out of what you said, and I don't know if that was your intention or not. Community input, furthering that effort. Preferred scenario recommendation. What with what we know, and put a big asterisk on that says we're not ready to go to town with that, but here's where we are based on the work that we did and what we heard from the town. Disposition strategy, which I don't know if that's the right term, but that's words that came to it. How do we go forward? How do we, and then necessary for that is Peter's comment about the phasing plan. Which comes first? What do we need next? Is there anything else that should be on this list?
So Dan, I would say information gaps. Like I think we should explicitly say this is the information. These are the areas where we need to know more to develop more confidence in our recommendations.
Excellent.
John, can I push you on that point for a sec?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just responding to John's point. I mean, agree and disagree. Obviously, we're way too early to do a lot of things. However, if we're talking about strategic planning for institutions, for companies that are 10, 15 years out, why wouldn't you start kind of setting up a conversation? I agree, you need to have a story, but let's be honest, you don't need to know everything that's going on the site exactly right now if you start a conversation with someone who's looking forward.
Yep, don't disagree. I agree. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say, would we fold the information gap search under the disposition strategy, or have that as a 5th item?
I was going to make the comment, one of the things that jumped off the page to me about the report was this notion of $2.8 million per acre to bring it to readiness. That seemed like a pretty high number to me for an acre of land that you then have to develop on. And recognizing that that's without really knowing what any of, what kind of additional remediation would be. But it seems to me that it's a number that we could latch onto in the sense that we could try and adopt a strategy that is designed to both make that number more concrete. In other words, something that you could sort of plan on as a developer, and also bring it down. So, if there's a grant, if there's a state program, if there's something else that can happen that takes care of one of the issues on the site, then the number comes down. If new issues are developed, then the number goes up. But we could sort of have a barometer of how much is it going to cost to, bring this land to the market, and try and work a program that's designed to make that more attractive, and therefore create a larger range of options for what can ultimately be done with it. And that might be a way to think about it a little bit more quantitatively.
Yep, I think that's a really important point, and certainly something that we came out of our efforts. We saw the specific, they came up with that tool, and we saw specifically what, the cause and effect of things. Mary, you have a question?
I do. While you're on the topic of information gaps, first of all, this has been a great meeting. I haven't been here in a while. I'm impressed. When you're listing information gaps, one of the things that's becoming apparent to us in the land use working group is this notion of the impact of on the schools of any development, which I know will be a big factor when it comes time to bring any kind of zoning articles to town meeting. And I find, and overall, I thought the report was great. I think scenario 3 is very promising, but the assumptions around the impact on the schools that was on page 52, I think is really oversimplified. And I think we need a more thorough understanding of what development means as far as impact on our schools. So I would like to add that to your list. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anyone else with their hand up. I think the next, so the next item was going to be discussion of ongoing and future community engagement. I feel like we talked about that. John, do you feel like we did that adequately?
I think Aaron's point was a good one, that we have some initial thoughts. We haven't had a chance to go through them in any detail. So I think we should schedule a COS meeting in the very near future, and then come back to you with a consensus on what we would recommend from a communication standpoint. And I welcome my other committee members to chime in if you have other thoughts.
I'm not seeing any. Peter?
So land use committee folks, maybe we can do something a week from tomorrow, just to sit down and start thinking through preferred scenarios and as a group.
That would be great. And then make a recommendation to the.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the full group.
That might help organize.
Shannon, if you could do something for the 22nd.
Are there any, Lee, I don't know if Lee's still on. I know he was driving somewhere. Elizabeth, do you think there's something to be had there in the, something similar to be in the
yeah, no, Mark, I'd asked Shannon to kind of relay to you that we can have a meeting whenever. I'm not sure exactly what we are going to be discussing at this point. If we want to go over scenarios from a legal and regulatory point of view, to me, it doesn't make a ton of sense right now, but I'm open to it.
I think if we could get you, let me ask you a question. If we could get you that phasing plan that agency was talking about, would that maybe give it some more meaning, and then talk through some disposition, like you were saying, disposition?
Sure.
So Shannon and I can make an effort on.
Yeah, if you let me know when we're going to be able to get that, then we could schedule something.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all. Confirm summer meeting schedule is the next item. Linda had suggested, which I thought made sense, to keep on a frequency of at least once a month, if not a couple of times a month, or maybe the alternating subcommittee meetings. Do folks have thoughts on that? Anyone have any objection to maintaining at least once a month on the full AB? Yeah.
I think that's at least.
And then as needed, if we, I mean, it'd be great. I don't know that we need to wait until the middle of August to come back. So maybe we could plan another meeting in a couple of weeks and see if we can't, because we want to get to the position, the point where we can update the select board.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. As it happens, we're meeting on select board meeting days at the moment. So if we went 2 weeks, then we probably wouldn't be ready to put it on that calendar, but you know, possibly August 11th.
So if we met on the 4th, and then we could present to the select board on the 11th.
8/2, I think it was 8/2 when no, it must be the 4th. You're right.
Yeah, that'd be pretty ideal.
Great. Still don't see anything from any hands. So general public comment. I'm hoping we exhausted you.
Yeah, just one other item. So I was approached by a colleague who's the planning director in Bedford, and
currently or previously?
Just over the last couple of weeks.
No.
Previously, and lives in Concord. He's been a planning consultant, and he wanted to volunteer to help us with the zoning phase. And I just wondered if that was something we were amenable to, and how we would, handle augmenting committee members, or making, someone on, it could be just the land use subcommittee member, if that was something the select board would be willing to entertain.
Is it a paid gig or is it
No,
just a volunteer?
It's just a volunteer. He's a Concord resident.
Okay. Sorry, do you want to answer that?
Well, I was just going to say that begs the question that we should be asking ourselves is, are we even ready to touch the zoning topic or not? And, at what point do we decide that it's not going to be an issue for next town meeting?
Yeah.
I've been there for a while, but
I don't feel like we're ready to, but I'm okay.
That's the question that the town and the state have to be in lockstep on, especially because if the state interprets not moving forward at a pace they expect, that might not allow you to keep dragging out the wastewater issue to take the time that it needs. But they're not going to want to go to town meeting. They're not going to want to have you go to town meeting any sooner than being able to get it. Yes.
Yeah.
Elizabeth and then Scott.
Oh, there. Okay, good. It worked. I would just say that I've been approached by people who would like to be participants as well. So I guess I feel like it might be inappropriate for us to just not randomly, but to take people who have asked us to be involved in that way.
So I'd like to suggest that maybe that kind of consideration would happen within your subcommittee, since it's going to be zoning. I think you guys are going to be on the.
About whether to add people to the advisory board?
Isn't
that a select board question?
Well, I'm sorry, not on the advisory board level, but potentially as a subcommittee.
Yeah.
Right.
You mean taking someone who's not on the advisory board and adding them to a subcommittee, to me, would be doing the same thing. You're adding someone to the advisory board. If we want to add people, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not sure, we would have to put it out there to other people who are interested.
Yeah, there's different models. Anyone can attend a meeting.
Okay,
and
so
contribute.
that's what, I don't know if you heard Shannon.
Well, no, there's different models though of subcommittees. There's instances where you have to be on the full board. There's instances like Concord 250 who probably had 60 subcommittee members who were not on the actual committee. But that is a select board question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Terrific.
Yeah, I think if this and when we're ready to stand up a zoning group, we'll have to have a discussion about how to constitute that group.
Okay. Scott?
Sorry to keep this going, but I'm curious about agency's team and their zoning consultant that they proposed and whether they were assuming they're gonna be brought on board later this year or to help us with that particular issue or not.
So that, I think the answer to that question is that was what prompted them, the discussion or the realization that we needed that phasing plan. Plus their recommended, associated with that would be their recommended next steps. And so I think that would.
Those are funded, right? Those are funded, right? For their zoning consultant and their phasing consultant,
Yes.
that's all funded, right?
Yes. Well,
Yeah, we have $100,000 from ARPA that has to be spent by December 2026
Okay,
for the zoning work. So there are some constraints on the funding source.
okay, thank you.
Linda?
I just remember that Megan had talked about 4A,
Yes.
and sort of, is that something that we're anticipating for the phasing portion, that agency would be brought in, and that we would use some of the funding that's available for that?
Well, when 4A was talked about, and you correct me if I'm wrong, when 4A was talked about, yeah, there was still the possibility that we could utilize unspent funds. That was my recollection of it, or up to a certain percentage.
Well, I think what I was hoping to get from today's meeting, which I agree with a lot of the commenters, that this has been extremely helpful, and I've taken down so many notes, and I think it's been a great conversation. What I was trying to understand is again, like, next steps. Like, agency isn't here, our contract with them has ended. So what is the plan going forward? And I think I heard a lot about what the plan is going forward. And one of the things I heard is that there is an interest to extend a contract with the agency for public outreach. And so it sounds, and correct me if this is kind of how I wrote it down, but the public outreach subcommittee is going to think about what exactly that means, what a scope would entail to extend a contract for that purpose. And also how the input would be incorporated. What are we going to do when we get more information from people? What does that look like? So that is it. That we do have an option to extend our contract with the agency for up to 25%, and so we would need to know what that would be, and this could be one element. I haven't heard conversation from the group today about other services that would be included in a contract extension scope yet.
I can imagine some, but you're right, we didn't specifically say.
These are the other things we wanted to do.
And I wonder if,
these are the updates we want them to incorporate. We have some updates, or we have feedback on the report, but we don't have additional, is it something you want to continue this contract to, that we want you to do additional public outreach, which means this and this and this. We also want you to make some changes to the report. We want to incorporate feedback support, that. I don't know how many bites at the apple of contracts extension we have. I can find that out, but
so, what, public outreach was absolutely the most clear in terms of the actionable items. I feel like, and now I'm beginning to realize that maybe the reason why we haven't seen the phasing plan yet, and I'm not positive about this, the next steps is because of a funding, we need to give them.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what exactly we're talking about on that, but okay. If that was part of our tasks 1 through 4, we'll have to check into that. If it was a future task.
4A.
Yeah, so no, we don't have that yet because we haven't asked them to do it.
Okay, okay. And then in addition to that, this what we talked about today, this information gaps, there, and that I would, you may not appreciate this, but we could put in your point about the 2.8 per acre. I mean, that's an important thing. I agree with you, and it kind of ties the different pieces together. So
I think thinking about the next chunk of work that needs to be accomplished should be identified by this group and by the subcommittees as you're planning to do. and then kind of package in an update to the select board as a proposal and request, because while there has been funding appropriated for as part of the state budget, which was mentioned earlier, which is wonderful news, and we're so grateful for the work that our legislators did to secure that. The comments made about the finality of earmarks in this fiscal climate is real, and so we can't count on that yet. There was funds passed by town meeting, but with the access to that is what's the plan, what's the budget, what this is a request here. This is.
And you have the 100,000. From ARPA, so.
We have 100,000 for the
total
zoning,
600.
those were kind of teed up to for tasks 5 and 6, but
Those are expended at the discretion of the town manager, but that still needs a plan. I think that I took the point about maintaining continuity very seriously from the report. So I would propose that we do move ahead on the public outreach side and try and get that squared away so that can continue to happen. And if phasing is a necessary step for designing each, then we should probably ask for some sizing and check on that. I think a couple of other things that we need to do actually today, we haven't said out loud, but I didn't hear any objections to anybody releasing this report publicly and broadly, and I think we should overtly say that now and let people in the public go ahead and see that.
Yeah, I would just add the caveat that once the minor changes that we've all sent into agency and to Shannon get incorporated.
Right.
Because there are things like the town listened to the advisory board. No, the advisory board listened to the town.
Yeah.
And we need to get some of that stuff clarified.
so the comments that were submitted are kind of, would people say that their comments that they sent in, some are kind of more kind of smaller administrative updates, or some are kind of more like fundamental framework
I
questions?
think they're mostly, the ones that I sent in were mostly minor changes of a word or two.
Okay, we haven't sent those over yet for them to update them, so how does that impact,
So I thought our last meeting was that the report was June 30th and that was it.
yeah, I think if there was a couple typos, we can have them updated. I have to kind of look through, I haven't looked through all the comments. I think if there's something blatant, our consulting team asked for the ability to make an update, right? So that there isn't a major issue, but the work is mostly is done. The product was delivered.
Yes.
And if we want to have a revised version at a future date to incorporate comments that all the board members have, and maybe even additional public outreach efforts, and there'd be another report down the road, that would need to be a scoped out work. So I guess it's understanding that there is this report that's out there, not publicly out there, but there are some comments people have. Are you comfortable with us kind of sharing, this is where we are as of today, knowing that it's a moment in time, and there'll be.
I think we should pick up the typos.
Yeah.
And I think I would characterize Peter's observation about the town versus, the listening. If there's, that might not sound like a typo, but someone's gonna pick up on that, and someone's gonna get hung up on that.
I have all of Peter's comments. Okay, we'll go through those comments and.
Yeah, so, but if it's, I wish this went further, I agree with you. We can't do that now.
Dan, I think would say anything, if they can get these corrections done in an hour or less, if we're talking typos and words, that's entirely reasonable. And I think that we should make those changes before we release it publicly, but then I think we should.
Yeah, that's a great point. Scott?
I got a question. I didn't want to make a correction or suggest something to agency until I talked to you all, but they refer to the site as 83 acres, and they incorporate the Department of Correction agricultural land as a development site. Now, I don't really consider that, I don't know why we're including that when it has nothing to do with us that are developable land. Why is that part counted as part of this whole development?
Yeah, I noticed that as well, and I may not be the right person to answer that, but my sense was that that's the parcel, the parcel, the extent of the possible parcels, and then in their work, they identified things that, you know, sub parcels that were not going to be included. So it's a little.
It's all green, the riverfront and wetland buffer I get because that's part of the site between the river. And they could put we can have walkways and things like, we can use that. But the Department of Correction Agricultural Land, I don't think we have any this development will have no use of that site. We're not gonna be farming, or people are not gonna be farming on that land. That's owned by the DOC.
It's owned by DOC, but it doesn't have an agricultural preservation restriction on it. It may be used by DOT for an off-ramp or something like that. But there's no contemplation of putting housing on it.
But why is it even part of our boundary? That's my curious.
Well, does it also get included in terms of the area that's in open space? Because that would set off
Right.
all the different, percentages of.
Right, we may want that,
Yeah.
Scott. It may be advantageous, right? Because to Linda's point, because that oftentimes you're looking for every little scrap
Okay.
to make the things work.
All right, I was curious.
We can ask the question, just to confirm that that's, the reason why they're doing it.
We can't use it. There'll be no future use for Concord for fields or anything like that.
No.
I mean, it's probably legally part of the parcel, so they had to include it, right? Like it's not been parcelized further.
That was thank you for articulating that, Aaron. That's right. John?
And just one quick one about just about out on the outreach. So we're trying to schedule a meeting for later this week for the community outreach subcommittee. If we can come to agreement on how we'd like to have the website changed, let's say that there's 5 or 10 hours of work that might be required from agency. That's going to be cost $500 to $1,000, let's say, right? Can we go ahead and ask them to do that?
I think Mark is saying yes.
I would support that. I don't think we can actually ask them yet.
We don't have a contract with them right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I was proposing is that we, as a board, agree that we would like that to happen, and then ask Megan and
Okay. Does that answer your question, John?
It answers it. Yes.
The work can't be done.
All right.
It can't be done after. It was entered into the.
Yeah, but this is the advantage of having the town meeting appropriation, is that we have money that's been appropriated that the town managers could spend on such a thing if we as a board recommend it. I'm suggesting that we should overtly recommend that.
So I guess my last comment then would be, if there's some way, Megan, that you could kind of figure out how we could move ahead with this little burst of effort, that would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Before we leave, John, I just wanted to say I really love those big colorful planters on the side of your building.
Thank you. Give Nancy from Barefoot Books credit for proposing those.
Oh, sorry, Linda.
So do we need to vote on releasing the report and with the
Yeah.
corrections?
I would accept that as a motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, starting in the room. Linda?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Dan? Yes. Erin?
Yes.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Is Lee still around? No.
Patrick is.
Oh, Patrick, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you all. And I would.
And do we need to also take a vote on releasing funds for communications?
You need to have Megan do what she's gonna do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
I think
I think we've given a strong sense of the committee that that's what we would like.
Yeah, you're requesting to access town meeting funds to do this work.
Yeah.
So I think there should, we don't know how much it is, right?
Right.
And we don't have a plan for the rest of the budget yet, but, is the request for, it says 5 to 10 hours for just the website, or you're talking for the scope of the?
You're talking about section
John
4A.
Whatever John
You just said
wants,
4A.
I mean, would be, I mean.
I think you're talking about two things.
I think,
I
yeah,
just-
I think
Talking
we're
about-
talking, I thought we were just talking John's right now.
Right.
John talked about two things. There's one that was, what's the plan for continuing outreach? That the
Yes.
subcommittee's gonna work on it. We don't have that scope yet, so we don't have a sense of what that costs yet.
Yep.
But he also talked about a one-off of, some web updates that need to be done, which is in the realm of 5 to 10 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna look into that one, but I think there needs to be a scope of services and a vote and a recommendation for.
Yeah, I was suggesting that we allow the community outreach group to define that on our behalf.
Yeah, so maybe we take this vote. Unless this unnecessarily delays you, Megan, can we postpone the vote to the 4th?
Sure.
Okay, does that seem reasonable?
Whatever
Well,
accommodates.
not the 5 to 10,
outreach.
right, thank you for differentiating that.
Let's see what we can do.
Okay.
But I'm also gonna need the list of like, what does that mean?
Yep.
You know, exactly.
And we'll count on John and his subcommittee to get that.
And us on next Tuesday.
And Elizabeth has her hand raised and she's on mute.
Elizabeth,
Hi, do we, sorry, the last thing you just said, that we're gonna take a vote on the rest of the budget allocation on the 4th, seems a little pressed to me.
We were just talking about the additional work on the outreach and website was gonna get defined.
Do you mean the 5 to 10 hours?
well, 5 to 10 hours, we think we can do without a vote.
So what are we
It's the-
voting on? Yeah, go ahead.
The balance of the work for the community outreach, and Peter and the land use committee will also define, anyone that's going to define, maybe including you guys, additional 4A cut type work will get scoped and then priced and then voted on,
All at the 4th, on the
if we
4th.
can. Yeah,
Why, I mean, I don't see us being ready to do that, but is there a
But
reason?
we'll hold off on what we don't have information on.
I'm sorry?
This is all, in the-
well, Peter was suggesting we would have to delay it to a future meeting if we're not ready with that, for those items.
Okay, I would also say, the 100,000 for ARPA that we have set aside for zoning, I think Megan, I've asked you this before, how flexible can that money be, and does it definitely have to be for zoning if we're now saying we're not sure about zoning being ready to go?
December.
Oh, yeah,
It has to be spent by December.
26.
There's no deadline for, I mean, there's a firm deadline for when it has to be spent by, but you're asking, how flexible is the topic? Like if it could be shifted to
Scope.
another MCI, planning
We're talking about,
effort.
yeah, we're talking about spending money right now, and if that's money available and we're not sure we're gonna use it for zoning, then.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on
Well-
that. I think we did, we set up these contracts to use the ARPA, and these are federal forms that we submitted, and we give descriptions for what we are planning to use the funds for. And this one, I can look back exactly at the.
Yeah, it would just be interesting to see how flexible it is.
there is some capability to repurpose ARPA funds, but it is limited.
Yeah.
And we don't have to wait, theoretically, we don't have to wait until the meeting on the 4th to have that answer. If Megan has it sooner, we can circulate that.
Great.
Okay. I would accept the motion to end the meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Peter.